Okay, so we're in the middle of eclipse season, or what astrologers call eclipse season, and I think it's worth talking about what an eclipse is and how this might be impacting us. And by the way, like when astrologers, for those of you who may not know, say we're in eclipse season, that means basically we're in between eclipses because eclipses come in series.
Most people don't even know what is an eclipse. So I always like to explain, like, why is this important? What is an eclipse? And so I always explain that it's literally when the sun, moon, and earth are in perfect alignment. And we actually talk a lot about portals and portals of energy. And I think in numerology, there's this huge misconception that if it's a repeating number day, not that I want to go off on a tangent here.
Don't get me started.
That like it's some kind of special portal, and like just because the numbers, and that's actually not true. It has to do with perfect planetary alignment. And so an eclipse is actually a great example of a portal of energy because you do have the earth, the sun, and the moon all in perfect alignment. And that kind of alignment does create a portal of energy. And so with that, you know, when we talk about eclipses, farmers used eclipses as signs of when to plant, when not to plant. They really used to use this in ancient times as a way to really understand what was going on the planet. And I think that actually ended up translating to the psychodynamic happenings in our lives. So eclipses essentially are like a really big warning sign of like, hey, you are meant to experience major change and transformation in your life.
I also want to add, since you touched on what it meant to go through an eclipse in ancient times, that in ancient times, if astrologers did not warn kings or queens of upcoming eclipses, they were beheaded. I read that somewhere a while ago and I was like, whoa. And that's also because, like, as you were saying, it is a portal of energy, but how that actually plays out is that there is significant change that happens around the eclipses. And I tend to find that people either hit a rock bottom if they're really out of alignment, which I've definitely been through, or you actually feel like there's like an extra boost in energy giving way to the path that you're on. It's like things really speed up.
It's like a supercharged full moon, supercharged new moon. And we always forget that the moons rule the bodies of water on our earth. And we are made of 60+%, depending on, I guess, your weight, etc. And how much water you drink. But of course, like, how could that not impact you? And I think what's really important here is that eclipses are major karmic checkpoints in your life. So it's almost like the universe, God, whoever you believe in, reminding you like, hey, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Like, are you in alignment? And I think we've all, I mean, I've personally gone through that. You're definitely going through that. And I think it's just really important to remember that with eclipses, it's like the change is coming and there's no getting off the train.
Yeah, I think that's really the theme of eclipses, is that it's such significant change and so much transformation. And of course, like where it's occurring, like the sign that it's occurring in has a lot to do with the themes that will be coming up. But I also think like the most accurate information that anyone will ever have around an eclipse and how it's impacting them is actually looking at which astrological house it's showing up in. And, you know, for anyone who maybe doesn't know what that means, in astrology, there are 12 houses. Like when you look at the zodiac wheel, when you pull up your chart, you see 12 little houses. Each house represents, you know, different themes. And depending on where the eclipse is, let's say it's in your 5th house of romance and children and creativity versus 6th house of health and daily routines and, you know, day-to-day work life. Like that's where you're really going to see, how is this impacting me?
Yeah. And I also think that what I've observed is that the more, I guess, that you have going on in your life, of course you're going to be hit harder because like personally for me, like I'm not going to lie. And like, I hope I don't get people hating on me saying this, but I'm traveling light. And so the eclipses are like I'm not really feeling that.
You gotta stop saying that,
know.
girl, because the universe is gonna bitch slap you if you keep saying everything is so great.
It's great. Everything's great. But, you know, of course, if you're like not really traveling heavy, as they call it, if you aren't at like major breakpoints in your life where you kind of need that slap from the universe, then like maybe you won't be hit that bad, you know? But like also, and we talked about this, it's like, I think I'm really ready for that kind of growth. And like the best way to really grow is to really push yourself into a zone of discomfort. And so of course, if you're already in a little bit of discomfort, the universe is really going to shove you even further into the pool, into the little deep end, so that you really know how to swim. Whereas in like the people out there avoiding, not that I'm avoiding, but you know, if you're out there, I saw that eye roll.
We've had many conversations about avoiding behavior lately, but continue.
I know. But anyways, if you're out there avoiding, there's only so much growth you're going to get. Not to say that I'm really jealous of the growth that you've gotten, or I'm like, wow, I wish I got that kind of growth. Like, I think that, so if you're dealing with a lot, like life is coming at you full force, it's like embrace it, because that is growth. And if you're sitting tight and nothing's going on, savor the moment, savor the peace, remember the moment and the peace that you have, because you're going to look back and be like, wow, that was such a special time. And I really like appreciate how calm life was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also just want to point out, like, when it comes to eclipses, some like practical ways of how this is probably going to play out for some people is, you know, here's an example. Like, if you're in a relationship that you know you shouldn't be in, your needs aren't being met, you're like going back and forth, like, should I still be with this person? And an eclipse comes, chances are that's when the breakup happens. That's when, you know, something comes to light, because sometimes eclipses will like kick things up, right? Yeah. It's kind of like cleaning out your closet in a way, and you'll kind of be forced to see things from a new perspective. And that's when I see like rock bottoms happening, where like a sudden breakup happens. Or, I mean, what's another like tangible example? I've definitely gone through breakups during eclipses.
I've had a lot of work stuff, I feel like, implode or like come to light, and both blessings in disguise. I think everything's a blessing in disguise though. And of course at the time I was like, wow, I can't believe this is really falling apart. But sometimes you need things to fall apart in order for new things to come in and take control and take over. I think what's really interesting about this set of eclipses is that it's also in retrograde with Mercury retrograde, which always means that like past stuff, past people are always going to be like major. That's like kind of what your major breakthrough will be reminding you of. And I also think that with eclipses, it's a matter of like, what's the main area of focus that you has been kind of like either zoomed in on your life, that you know there's something wrong. Like, you know, and most people are like, I'm so confused. I'm like, you're not confused. Yeah. You're never, you know, like we all know what's coming. And I think that eclipses, they're very no bullshit. They are like, I will smack it right in your face. And we need that.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, not to like scare anyone, I think the most extreme rock bottoms I've ever hit have always coincided with an eclipse. Even when I didn't follow astrology, I went back and tracked the eclipses in my life, and that's when I was like, whoa. Like, they always coincided with crazy events in my life. But sometimes there are amazing things that happen with eclipses too. Like, if you really are like, you know, for lack of better words, like in alignment, and you're not like kind of holding on to things that aren't meant for you, then I do feel like it's an extra boost. Like, you know, I had a lot of things happen with my book that pushed my, you know, book out into more success, that again had to do with the eclipse energy, or not had to do, but like coincided with it, right? So I don't want people to think like, oh, you're going to hit a rock bottom guaranteed. It's just that depending on where you're at, and again, like, are you happy with where you're at? Are you in alignment? Are you like saying yes to the things that are meant for you and no to the things that aren't? Then I think it's just going to like really be a supportive time, if anything, and a time for you to reflect. But if you are in this place of, God, I've been in this relationship for the past year, I don't know if it's right for me. And then that's usually when things get cleared out. And eclipses are also just like really emotional, right? Because again, anything with the moon cycles can be really emotional, but this being like a supercharged version of that, especially the upcoming one in Scorpio, that one's going to be a doozy. But it'll be the last Scorpio eclipse in the series, because the past 2 years we've been having Taurus and Scorpio eclipses, right? Because again, those are polarity partners. Eclipses always happen on an axis, so the opposite sign. For those who may not know, obviously. Yeah. You know, yeah.
And I also think that like a lot of people ask me like, what should I do then? What should I do? And I always say, don't do anything. Yeah. Literally don't do anything. Like
surrender.
I know, it's up for surrender. And I think
just keep living your life. But I think
exactly.
Like you should, it's just being aware of the energy that I think is really helpful. Like, you know, when I know an eclipse is coming, I'm not like panicked. I'm not running around trying to like do a bunch of tasks or fulfill anything. It's more about like knowing that, right? Like when the last eclipse happened, I felt really emotional that day. It was a really hard day for me. And it was nice to know like it's maybe not just me. It's like this eclipse energy. And that way I didn't get in my head of like, oh man, like why am I so emotional today? What's wrong with me? It's more like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
The eclipse is here. It's impacting us. It is feeling a little bit more emotional today, but I can like kind of work with this energy and release, which is what I did.
Yeah.
You were like, girl, just stay home and cry. And I did.
I know. And that's sometimes I think that you just need to like hang back. And I always tell people like, just double down on self-care and maybe don't try to force anything crazy big because you're like, oh my God, it's the eclipse. So I'm going to do all this special stuff. It's like, the only special thing you need to be doing is like laying low and like living your life. And, you know, for me, like I'm always a little irritable. Like I have crazy dreams coming. I think and I've been having a lot of people reach out to me like, I've been having crazy dreams. It's like, that's very normal with any type of like major moon cycle happening to have intense dreams, really bad sleep.
Yeah.
And because like I said, guys, like, water, we are 60+% water, and the moons do affect the water on our earth. And I think it's just really conscious to be mindful of where you are at energetically and just continue living life the best you can is the advice I always give people, and that I always remember for myself. And sometimes I like will unconsciously schedule things the day of that. Like I'm like notorious for flying on full moon days. Like, you know me, you're like, why would you do that for yourself? And I was like, I don't know, it just happens that way.
But it's like specific.
I know, it's
like,
weird.
Yeah, it's not like you're not conscious of it and you always book travel on new moons or full moons. I'm like, this is just an interesting pattern of yours.
Yeah, but I book a lot of things. Like I had a client reading on the eclipse day and like I was like, I didn't even think anything of it.
But I don't think that's bad, you know?
No, it's
like,
not.
Again, like you're not supposed to stop your life because of these transits. And if anything, I always tell people like astrology is just a tool. It's not there to like dictate how you should live. It's there to support what you're doing already, right? And the moment that it's not supporting you and it's not resonating, you should get rid of it, right? Like, again, so many people live in fear of like Mercury retrograde or eclipses or whatever. And it's kind of like, to me, missing the point. Yeah. Like, it's kind of like if I want to build a table, I want a hammer, right? Like, but it's a tool, right? It's like we are using these tools to help us understand ourselves, to reflect, but it isn't like necessarily, you know, to me at least, and let me know what you think, I don't think it's like a guidebook of like, here's how to live, because we do have free will, you know?
I completely agree. And I actually think of it as a really great pattern tracking tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's more about understanding it as a metric system for your life. So going back to the last set of eclipses, coordinating with the signs, like what happened then, and before then, what
Yeah.
happened then. And like, you know, I think of these as data points instead of causation. It's more correlation. It's like
Yeah.
what happened during this eclipse cycle or that full moon, like what were big themes that came up. And I think that's a more interesting way to analyze. It's way more analytical versus this like witchy woo-woo kind of like scary foreshadowing causation kind of situation that I think it gets a really bad reputation with. But that's why I personally fell in love with astrology, was because it's truly a metric system and a tool of tracking your own personal data points.
Yeah. I mean, it's more like therapeutic in a way and self-reflective. But I mean, like you and I work as astrologers, and obviously I'm a numerologist, and we oftentimes don't even track our own charts or our own cycles or anything. And sometimes it's just kind of like, you know, you check it when you need to, or again, when a really important astrological event is happening, I always like take that as time to like reflect. But that's like the power in these tools is the reflection, right? Of being like, where am I at in my life in regards to these like Scorpio themes, for example? Like, how am I feeling about sex, death, rebirth, like occult things? Like, again, these are all Scorpio traits, by the way, for those who may not know. I'm not just throwing them out there, but it's like a good time to reflect. And that's like, again, I think that's how we use astrology and numerology to empower our lives. It's not the other way around. It's not like, oh my God, this eclipse is coming, and whoa, it's in my 6th house. Am I going to be okay? That's the house of health. It's like the moment that you're looking at it like that, you've kind of missed the plot line, in my opinion. Yeah.
And I also think that it's a really, really great way to just be conscious because, and we talked a little bit about this.
Expanding consciousness too. Yeah. It's all about expanding your own consciousness and how you see yourself in the world.
Yeah. And when you witness a thought and like put it out into your universe, and this is why like there's so much interesting theories and thoughts about like manifesting during the eclipse, which I don't buy into fully.
Yeah.
But when you really...
And I think people don't, I think a lot of astrologers say don't manifest during the eclipse just because the energy doesn't feel totally grounded, right? It's kind of like an up in the air, chaotic energy.
It is.
And so it's kind of hard if energy, it's kind of like if you're in a boat and the water's really choppy, right? It's like, that's not the best time to maybe like get out on your wakeboard. Well, maybe not. You get what I'm saying. Maybe I don't know where I'm going with this, but you understand.
Yeah.
Y'all understand.
Well, I also think that it's more about we think consciously we know what's best for us. We think we know what's best.
We never
know
do.
what's right.
Or, I mean, sometimes.
We know where we want to go. But the reality is our higher selves knows. Like God and the universe or whatever you believe in,
our
souls know.
Yeah.
And there's the conscious part of us actually doesn't know. And so when you put forth all these thoughts and ideas and manifestations during a time when there is an alchemizing moment where God, the universe, the higher self really wants to get you into alignment, into a bigger, better place that you don't even know where you could go, you're kind of messing with a vibration of where you could go. And like the picture is even bigger than what you could ever imagine for yourself. And I think that's
so true.
That's why it's maybe best to let the dust settle and just let go and let flow, as I like to say.
Let go and let God. I always say that.
That's a good one too.
And it's like, really to kind of bring that point home, that's another interesting point that, you know, when we are so set on a certain reality, like we might be closing ourselves off to something even better. Like before my book deal came through, I was not thinking about a book deal. Like all the things at that time, and you remember because obviously we were living in New York and we're together every day. But at the time, like if you were like manifest your wildest dreams, it wouldn't have occurred to me to like write a book and that it would like be successful, or that I would be with Penguin Random House, my publisher. Like that just like wouldn't have entered my consciousness. I think I would have been like, oh, I think my best case scenario is, I don't know, like building out my clients more, even though I had a really like busy schedule back then, or something with music, right? And it's like that book deal coming through changed my life. And me being so open at that time of being like, I'm open to, you know, whatever direction I'm meant to be, I'm just trusting. I feel like that's kind of the energy to embody during an eclipse. I mean, and really, the energy to embody always, right, is to kind of like always have that looseness, that openness, so that you're not so attached to something that you end up missing something that is just so much better.
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna agree more.
Yeah. And do you have any like closing tips for anyone regarding the upcoming eclipse and like this eclipse season that right now that we're in?
I think it's just really important to take time for yourself. Like self-care is really important. So like definitely make sure you do something for yourself. It doesn't have to be super special, but like taking a little bath for yourself, like taking time for yourself, getting a massage. Yeah. I think it's really, I love journaling and tracking things that happen, because I'll look back 5 years. I mean, I was reading my journals in college during the pandemic, and I was like,
that's so crazy.
It was so weird.
I've done that before. It's like, so weird. It's so weird.
This is what I was obsessed with.
Right?
What? And it's
or when you're like so upset about something, and now you're like, I haven't even thought about that since like it happened. Yeah.
But I always say, just journal how you were feeling, what happened, bullet point out kind of just observations. You don't even have to make like manifestations or whatever you want to call them. So those are just kind of my easy, simple tricks, or just take time to yourself, journal, and let life, you know, move through life as you normally would, because you're gonna continue living. Like life doesn't stop because there's an eclipse.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I guess my advice would be stay open and lay low.
Let go and let God.
Let go and let God. Redirection is protection. All the woo-woo cliche things. But I mean, it's true. Like, and don't freak yourself out. Don't future trip. Don't get in your head. Just allow.
Yeah.
Relax and allow.
Yes.
I think that's good.
Yeah.